Good afternoon and welcome to In Depth. Now, for the first time in over 60 years, France's government has collapsed. In a surprising turn of events, Michel Barnier's government was ousted by a historic no-confidence vote, backed by both left and right-wing parties, after a controversial budget proposal ignited a political storm. With parliament divided and no new elections until 2025, the road to stability seems uncertain, with France now in political turmoil. What will happen next? Stay tuned. In a historic move, the deputies of the French National Assembly voted in favor of a no-confidence vote, forcing French Prime Minister Michel Barnier to resign and his government to collapse. A total of 331 deputies, mostly from the left-wing New Popular Front and the far-right National Rally, mentioned for the no-confidence vote, well over the 288 votes required. Speaking to the French lawmakers before the vote, Barnier defended the decision to force passage of the 2025 social security budget. Barnier has become the first French prime minister to be forced to step down by a no-confidence vote since 1962. Highlighting the political turmoil in France, Le Monde reported that President Emmanuel Macron is looking to solve an unprecedented power vacuum amid the budget debate, while facing calls from the opposition to resign. The Prime Minister handed in his resignation on Thursday morning. The 73-year-old former European Commissioner had already said his farewell to members of Parliament in a speech tinged with sadness and bitterness, and to his ministers whom he gathered at his office.
In a historic move, France's political landscape was shaken, as Prime Minister Michel Barnier's government was ousted by a no-confidence vote, marking the first such motion since 1962. The National Assembly approved the motion by 331 votes. The National Assembly resorted to the no-confidence vote to remove Barnier after just 3 months in office, propelled by intense opposition to his proposed budget. This coalition of the far-right National Rally and left-wing New Popular Front united in their criticism of Barnier's austerity measures, accusing him of ignoring the needs of ordinary citizens. Barnier, who was appointed in September following a divided election outcome, now stands as the shortest-serving prime minister in modern French history. The no-confidence motion has only deepened France's political chaos, with no single party holding a majority in parliament. President Emmanuel Macron, however, insists he will complete his term through 2027, though he now faces the task of appointing a new prime minister for the second time since July's elections. Barnier's resignation, expected soon, will leave a leadership vacuum as the nation grapples with unprecedented divisions. As Macron prepares to address the nation, the future of France remains ambiguous. With a fractured parliament, a growing political crisis, and no clear path forward, can France find stability, or is this just the beginning of deeper turmoil?
Following the Prime Minister's resignation, Paris demonstrations erupted. So let's go live into the demonstrations to see what's going on in Paris.
sortis dans la rue et le disent. On va passer ses terres. Vénère, on va passer ses terres, on les déterre. Vénère, on va passer ses terres, on les déterre. Vénère, on va passer ses terres, on les déterre. Vénère, on va passer ses terres, on les déterre. Vénère, on va passer ses terres, on les déterre. Vénère, on va passer ses terres, on les déterre. Vénère, on va passer ses terres, on les déterre. Vénère, on va passer ses terres, on les déterre. Vénère, on va passer ses terres, on les
That was live from Paris, showing the demonstrations that erupted following the no-confidence vote that ousted the French government. And to explore the political turmoil in France, we're joined from Paris by Dr. Majid Boudin, Professor of International Law. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
Now, what we've seen and that the French government has collapsed after this historic no-confidence vote. What should we be expecting at those upcoming days?
Well, the next step is the appointment of a new prime minister. The Constitution of France provides for these kind of issues. The French president is still in charge until 2027. So he had the possibility and the obligation to appoint a new prime minister, and this will be done. However,
are we speaking here about the assigning of a new prime minister, or are we speaking about elections? Are we speaking about a caretaker? What are we speaking about here?
I mean, there is no new elections in the next future, at least for the next 7 months, because
Yes.
the French Constitution is providing that when the president dissolves the parliament, at least the House of Representatives, then we call it the National Assembly. Then he cannot dissolve it again, unless only after 12 months, after a year. So now it was dissolved in July, so now we have to wait until next July. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, he cannot dissolve the parliament again. So then what he has to do is to appoint a new prime minister with the National Assembly as it is, with the equilibrium in between the three major forces: the left-wing force with the extreme left, with the central body, which with the central parties supporting the president, and the extreme right wing.
Now,
But-
Doctor, yes, please.
But there is no majority, and they did not agree to have a majority. So we will have a minority government, and the minority government must seek arrangement with other parties to not be censored and to not be overthrown again.
Now,
So
yes,
these are the
yes.
issues.
Yes. Now, from your point of view, what does the joint action of France's far-right and left-wing lawmakers say about the current state of the political polarization in France?
Well, we have to remember that how we come to this situation. We come to the situation after the elections, and the votes were very clear. That means that the right wing was elected by its own electorate. But for the left wing and for the central parties, they have been elected by an arrangement, by a kind of arrangement that they will support each other to face the extreme right parties. So instead of following the same arrangement to form a new government, they were each one wanted to form a government by its own, and they could not succeed. So now they are facing the same problem, which means that nobody will have the majority. And we are stuck in this situation, but we have to find a solution. So the new prime minister must find a solution. Why now the extreme left has joined the extreme right and vice versa? And this is against the mandate that they have received, at least for the extreme left, from the mandate they have received from in the elections. And it will be a major sanction in the next election in several months. So, but for the time being, we have to cross the bridge. We have to cross the bridge with a new prime minister. The president will not resign. There is no room to discuss a resignation, because he has the constitution obliges him to not resign, because he must supervise and guarantee the continuation of the institution of the state. So there is a crisis. It's a ministerial crisis. Europe is used to this kind of crisis. We can see what happens in Germany, in Spain, in Belgium, in Italy, in Holland, in the Netherlands. So it is very common.
You mean that the situation in France could really reflect on the whole Europe at large?
Yes, of course, because now Europe is preparing itself for negotiations with the new administration, the new American administration, with President Trump coming into power again. So they must prepare these talks. They must prepare these negotiations. It will be tough negotiations. They have also the war in Ukraine, the war in the Middle East, all what's happening in Africa. So the negotiations with China, and they cannot continue in this situation. So they must find a solution very quickly, and the French president must appoint a new prime minister. Mm-hmm. Probably he will appoint somebody, politician from the central parties, but he will give him the opportunity to discuss with the left, the moderate left parties, mm-hmm. to try to form a government which can survive any censorship.
Now, before we go into choices and chances, let me here ask Michel Barnier is the shortest serving prime minister in the modern French history. Now, what does this tell about the challenges or rather in France, that led to a deeply divided parliament?
Yes, but this is a fact. Now we have to deal with the facts as they are. There is a difference between what's going on, what is the constitution rules in Germany and Spain, for instance, where a majority can overthrow a government only if they can form a new government in substitution. In France, we don't have this rule. So in France, when you have a majority which can overthrow a government, they can overthrow it. But the second after, when they have to form a government, they are split out and they cannot form a government. So we are in a mess. And therefore, the president...
But indeed, what I wanted to ask you is what led to such a mess? What led to such division? And what does this reflect or tell about the challenges that is really facing France?
Well, what led to this is political opportunism. The right wing, they are opposing on every point the left, the extreme left, and the extreme right has taken the opportunity of a motion of censorship against the government, and they voted it just by pure opportunism, political opportunism. And exactly the same thing for the extreme left. They have accepted to play the game with the extreme right. And these two parties are playing a dangerous game only to create political chaos in the parliament and they wanted to force the president to resign, but the president will not resign, and they will not succeed in this. They will paralyze the political life for a while, but now we'll have a new prime minister, and the new prime minister, if he is overthrown again, it will be another prime minister, and after when they will fade the elections, the electorate will see that these two extreme parties, extreme left and extreme right, are playing with the institutions just to take power. So it's this is not acceptable for a very old democracy like France. Therefore, the future is very clear. Now we'll have a new prime minister. The new prime minister will try to form a government, but they cannot censor it again. They cannot vote against it. They cannot overthrow it.
Dr. Boudin, here, how important is it at this very critical time for a display of unity between France's far right national rally and the left-wing New Popular Front, and what can we expect from these factions going forward?
There is no any unity at all between them. It's just a matter of opportunism. They took an occasion. They can unify to overthrow a government. They cannot unify to form a government because each one wants to get to power very quickly, and this is their aim. For the left-wing leader Mélenchon, he just wants to get into power, and he's declaring this very openly, without caring about what he's going to do or he can stabilize the country. He just wants to pay everybody, and he wanted to change the rules. He wanted to change the way, even the constitution. He's calling for a new constitution. Now the extreme right, they are facing a problem with its leader, Marine Le Pen. He is facing a trial of misbehaving in European financial payments from the EU, and she could be banned from any political mandate for a certain period of time, and she could be not allowed to run for the next presidential elections. So this is why she wanted to create this chaos and to put pressure on the judiciary. And I believe she will not succeed in putting this pressure on the judiciary, because the judiciary is independent by nature. And if she believed that by creating this chaos, they will call her to find a solution and maybe to avoid this a possible judicial sanction. And this is why they cannot unite anyhow. They have shown, and it's seen that they cannot unite. They can do negative things, they cannot do constructive things. And this is why one day or another, France must come to the solution to avoid this kind of situation by amending its constitution, like the Germans and like the Spanish, to provide that if a majority can overthrow a government, it can be done only under one condition, which is to form a government in substitution.
Now, from your point of view, France is now plunging into a political turmoil. From your point of view, what can President Macron do to alleviate the political crisis, particularly at this very, very critical time the whole world is passing by and just ahead of a new US presidency?
Well, it's to appoint very quickly a new prime minister who can find consensus to not be overthrown for at least the next few months, at least for next 6 months or 7 months. So if he can succeed to do this for the next 6 months, and I think it's possible, because nobody can dare to overthrow a second government. And therefore, he must do this very quickly, and I believe he can do it. He had all the possibilities to do it, and it will be done, I believe.
Right. You spoke about how will that reflect on Europe at large. Now, what impact exactly does the resignation of Barnier have on the broader European political landscape, particularly concerning the stability of the EU bloc?
Well, regarding the EU bloc, it doesn't affect the stability, because Belgium, Germany, Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, all these countries are used to drag along to form a government. So Europe is used to that, and they are solid enough.
But France is a very strong member of the European Union.
Yes, of course. But Europe as such, they are used to have these kind of dragging along to form a government. So it doesn't have any impact, and the impact will be circumvented when you have a new prime minister, because then you have a new government. We have seen the euro was not affected today, and so the matter will go on. I believe in few days the matter will be stabilized.
Remains to be seen, definitely remains to be seen. That was from Paris, Dr. Majid Boudin, a professor of international law. We thank you so much for your insightful analysis, and I guess that brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.